Today's card review features the third family. Just announced is the Jade Lotus. Well, I mean, it's been announced for a while, but the cards have just been revealed. So we'll begin by looking at the neutrals. We've got Hozen Healer. I think this is one of the more interesting filler cards of the set, in that the text is kind of interesting. It has a lot of possible value. The dream of Hozen Healer is to probably play turn 3 Felorc Soulfiend or Injured Blade Master. If you play Felorc Soulfiend, and then on the next turn, say your opponent plays a 3 mana 3/3. We're like living in the dream world here. Felorc Soulfiend becomes a 3/2, and then you play Hozen Healer, and then you heal for 5. That's pretty impressive. Or you just play Injured Blade Master, and then you follow up with Hozen Healer. Then on turn 4, you'll have a 4/7 and a 2/6. That's pretty decent too. Anyways, those are the dream situations for Hozen Healer. In reality, I don't really see this card being played that much, though it is, at the very least, somewhat competitive. Like, remember that at 4 mana, I think if you get 10 stats worth of value for 4 mana, you're looking alright pretty these days, because a Yeti, which is 9 stats in mana, isn't seeing any play. So if you get 10 stats of mana for 4 mana, that's doing alright, which means this Battlecry needs to get 2 stats worth of mana. That's not too bad, but I think because of the 2 attack stat line, it probably needs closer to 3 stats a line. It's pretty tough to do. And yes, you can actually combo this card with Embrace the Healing or Occupy Soul Priest in order to completely kill a minion, but I feel like such an application is kind of limited. Cool effect, probably statted reasonably. I feel like it's too slow. Burgly Bully, kind of a Troggish effect. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, punish them. This punish is somewhere between significant and annoying. Adding a coin is kind of a big deal. If you get a coin added to your hand, then that means Burgly Bully is effectively a 4 mana 4/6 since you get the coin discount. It's kind of similar to Tomb Pillager, which is a 4 mana 5/4 Death Rattle out of coin, which lots of times makes a 3 mana 5/4 in effect. This card is meant to be you have control of the board, that they have no minions, and then you play the Burgly Bully, and then they have to use spells to remove it. And if they do, you're getting coins and some serious discounts. Comes back to my earlier statement that for 4 mana, you kind of want about 10 stats. So with the Burgly Bully, if you have a 5 mana, and you get a coin for it, that's kind of like you spend 4 mana for it, and the coin can be better than just 1 mana because of the spell effects like Gadgetzan, which means this card's kind of competitive. And on top of that, you can get this discounted by more than 1 mana. And in the worst case, yes, it's just a 5 mana 10 stat card, which is less good than probably the 12 stats you need for a 5 mana card. But it's not a disaster to play a 10 stat card for 5 mana. Anyways, applications of this card are going to be to play it alongside Tomb Pillager and Rogue and get even more coins for the Gadgetzan Auctioneer. Rogues and Gadgetzan Auctioneers love them coins. Another application is to get this card out early, such as with Innervate, before your opponent has the minion power to be able to deal with it to further guarantee yourself a coin. I think it's a solid card and will actually be considered a bully card, so it's named appropriately. Because you're bullying your opponent by threatening them, oh, you better not cast a spell, otherwise you're going to give me a coin. I like the design. Fight Promoter is probably a really cool take on Ancient of Lore. I have to say, from a designer perspective, I really like cards that generally have the word if in them, because you have kind of a mini quest to play the game in a slightly different way to try to get something to happen and then make that happen. And that's kind of the essence of deck design and build. It's like a 3 mana 4/4 battle cry, draw an Arcane Intellect. You know, there's all these fine things you can say about, oh, but you don't actually draw one. Create an Arcane Intellect, how about that? And then you can play the Arcane Intellect immediately for 3 mana. But the essence is that 3 mana 4/4, which draws a good card, is really good compared to the 4 mana Gnomish Inventor. That's why Ancient of Lore was so good. Anyways, the point is, it's really good if you can get it to work. Now, besides Druid, though, and all those big buff cards, how can you get it to work? And this is where I'm taking a little bit of leap here. I'm counting on Ben Brode's tweet to be accurate. Ben Brode tweets the following. Fight Promoter seems pretty good with weapon smuggling cards that buff your hand, wink wink. So I'm going to take that as meaning that if you buff Fight Promoter, you can use Fight Promoter with herself to draw 2 cards. All it requires is a +2/+2 buff or 2+1/+1 cards. So you won't believe how many takes I did in order to get Fight Promoter. But the essence of why Fight Promoter's Battlecry works with herself is because of the way that Battlecry works. And, this isn't very obvious, and it might have been slightly inconsistent somewhere through the beginning of vanilla Hearthstone, is that the minion actually enters play and then the Battlecry goes into effect. That is why Yogg's run can kill itself. It wouldn't make sense if Yogg could interact with himself, right? If he wasn't already in play, for example. And it's why Leroy Jenkins can kill himself when Knife Juggler throws knives at the opponent's Leroy Jenkins. So, in essence, Fight Promoter will be in play, and then the Battlecry will check whether or not a minion with 6 or more health is in play. And Fight Promoter can have 6 or more health. And then there you go. Mana Geode. So this is the Priest 2-drop that everyone's excited about. Can you hear the foreboding lightning in the background? Is this the new OP Priest card that will herald in all of Priest Imbalance? It's a 2-mana 2/3. Whenever this minion is healed, summon a 2/2 crystal. That's some incredible value potential in that your hero power can turn into summon a 2/2 crystal. That's a really good hero power. Man, my Paladin hero power only summons 1/1s. But then we get brought down to earth by Noblord, who wrote an article. It's actually a fairly significant and substantial article about how Mana Geode is not a good card, a quick analysis. The general consensus, apparently according to him, is that main Priest players like Tic Tac, who hit #1 Priest, Ness, who won a major tournament with Priest, Noblord, who hit 12 wins with Heroic Tavern Brawl with Control Priest. It's Shadow Boxer-esque. Shadow Boxer was a 2-mana 2/3. Whenever any minion was healed, dealt 1 random damage. Shadow Boxer ultimately ended up seeing no play whatsoever. In a world where Norshire Cleric, a 1-mana 1/3, is often not being played in a number of Priest decks, can the Mana Geode be better? Is summoning a 2/2 crystal better than drawing a card? It might even spawn a new Priest archetype. You go turn 2 Mana Geode, you go turn 3 Cabal Talon Priest, the new card. You give your Mana Geode +3 health, then that's a 2/6 Mana Geode, which makes it a lot more likely to be able to be healed. That's actually a pretty sweet sounding opening right there. Perhaps for those naysayers who are like, Mana Geode isn't even that good, I'll give a bit of a positive outlook that it's a 2-mana card. It's not supposed to carry the game by itself. It's supposed to be like a small threat. And Mana Geode might be considered threatening enough that your opponent has to remove it. So is it good? Is it going to see the way of Shadow Boxer? I'm going to say that it probably won't fit the traditional Control Priest style, but it's possible that a Curve Priest might try to play Mana Geode. Alright, and Raza the Chained, a very exciting card. 5 mana 5/5 if your deck has no duplicates. Battlecry. Your hero power costs 0 this game. That's not only the current hero power, but all future hero powers as well. So if you Finley your hero power, it still costs 0. If you Justicar your hero power, it still costs 0. If you Shadow Form, it still costs 0. That's really good. Needless to say, it's going to see play if Reno Priest sees play. So the question then is, will Reno Priest see play? Well, Reno Jackson isn't really that much of an auto-include in a deck like Priest. Why? Because Priest can already heal itself. So is it worth playing like Raza to have the inconsistency of having a deck with no duplicates? Well, all I can say is that this deck will definitely be attempted, and then we'll try. You can do some pretty insane combos with this card. If you discover a Kaldara Drake with Cabal Courier, and then your hero power becomes something that deals damage, such as with Finley or with Shadow Form, then you can infinitely, after you play your Kaldara Drake, just kill your opponent with Steady Shot or Fire Blast. Now I show you how to hunter. Steady Shot, pew 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 pew. You can even get Kaldara Drake by Forbidden Shaping for 6. It can happen. And if you get armor up, then you have basically as fast as you can click that button before your turn ends. It's not infinite health, but it's a lot. If this were like not a digital card game with a rope, you could just say, alright, now I have infinite health. So we've seen two of our families already. We've seen the Grimy Goons and we've seen the Cabal. So who are the Jade Lotus? The Jade Lotus are a family mostly made from people that come from Pandaria, and they have just one goal, collecting all this jade. Why are they collecting all this jade? Well, it's been revealed it's to summon Jade Golems. The first time you summon a Jade Golem, it's a 1 mana 1/1. The second time you summon a Jade Golem, 2 mana 2/2. And so on and so on. Third time it's a 3/3, fourth time it's a 4/4, 10th time it's a 10/10, 30th time it's a 30/30. It's pretty good. Jade Spirit's Battlecry, summon a Jade Golem. What's fair for 4 mana? Man, this is a common theme. Well, if you're summoning a Jade Golem and it's a 1/1, then that's a 4 mana 2/3, which summons a 1/1. It reminds me of Razorfen Hunter, which is a really bad 3 mana card. What if it summoned a 2/2? Then that's 2/3 plus a 2/2. That's Yeti stats. You summon a 3/3 Jade Golem. Well, now we're talking. 4 mana 2/3 summon a 3/3. That's 5/6 worth of stats. So, will we see this card played? Is a really interesting question that I actually cannot answer at the moment, because this family truly is a family which requires you to see all the Jade Golem cards before you can actually discern how good a Jade Golem is. You don't even have to have the 3/3 Golem summoned on turn 4 in order for Jade Spirit to be good. It's like, is Jade Spirit an ender or is it a starter? If it's an ender, then your payoff is you're getting like a 3/3 Jade Golem on 4. That's great. If it's a starter, that means you're using this card to help buff future Jade Golems. In the late game, if you've summoned a 5/5 Golem before and you top deck Jade Spirit, your Jade Spirit can summon a 6/6 Jade Golem. How good is that? I think anyone who tries to say that at the moment without seeing all the Jade Golem cards, they're reaching a bit. So for now, it seems like this card might be good in a Jade Golem deck, but it's really tough to say at the moment. Aya Blackpaw. So 6 mana 5/3 Battlecry and Death Rattle summon a Jade Golem. Even if you haven't summoned any Jade Golems prior to Aya, this is Battlecry summon a 1/1, Death Rattle summon a 2/2. If you combine all of that in stats, that's a 6 mana 8/6. Which isn't that impressive, but if you've summoned just one Jade Golem prior to that, she's a great card. I think it goes without saying that in every single deck which runs Jade Golems, you'll run Aya Blackpaw. Okay, up next is the card that I think has gotten the most overhyped out of every single card out there. The moment I showed this card, everyone was like, OP, OP, and not in an ironic way, like in a real way. I think most people are thinking the shuffle 3 copies of this card into your deck part is really strong. That part is like almost useless, I think, and will not see play the majority of the time. However, summon a Jade Golem for 1, that could be really powerful. So the first time you summon a Jade Golem, yeah, it's not very good. It's 1 mana 1/1, but you have to get started on building your Jade Golem somehow. And this is probably one of the ways that you're most likely going to get it. This is definitely a starter card. And then you play your Aya Blackpaw, that's more like a finisher card, and then you get your 2 really big Jade Golems. So why is the second part not very good? For 1 mana, you shuffle 3 copies of this card into your deck, and then you're drawing 1 mana cards in the late game. And yes, you can summon Jade Golems with it, which will probably be like 4/4s or 5/5s. And 1 mana 4/4 or 1 mana 5/5 is pretty good. But if you're top decking, you don't want to draw 1 mana 4/4 or 1 mana 5/5. And I'm saying it's not as good as people think it is. That's all I'm saying. I think a lot of people have this grandiose idea of going like, turn 1 Jade Idol for 3 more Jade Idols. And then later they're just going to draw this Jade Idol and they haven't like worked on their Jade Golem yet. And it's like, but now it's worth mentioning this is a really cool card in the sense that you now have inevitability with this, which is to say, you cannot be out-fatigued. And that is cool. You can go into any game saying that, alright, if I can survive the 30 cards of the opponents, I win this game because I have Jade Idol in my deck. Even if I have just 1 copy of Jade Idol, no other Jade Golem synergies whatsoever. And there is the idea of doing this Gadgetzan Auctioneer combo, but that's not that incredible, is it? So you do Gadgetzan Auctioneer, and then you do Jade Idol, and you shuffle 3 copies of the card into your deck. Then what? You innervate, and then you get like some more Jade Idols. You play Jade Idol, maybe you draw Jade Idol again. You play Jade Idol. You get some Jade Golems. You shuffle more copies of the card into your deck. Okay, that's actually sounding pretty good. But it is a really late game combo. It's like a 10 mana combo that you want to do that at, probably. Anyways, the essence of it is that Jade Idol is going to be a card that puts Druid in an interesting direction where they're going to want to control until like the opponent basically runs out of cards. Something like that. That's when the Jade Idol starts to get really sick. Or it's just going to be a card that can be used to build a Jade Golem. And that's like good in itself. A really fascinating card, which I am going to kind of stay off on evaluating until we see every single Jade Golem card. But needless to say, in a Jade Golem deck, I think you'll run Jade Idol. Jade Blossom. It is wild growth, and you get a Jade Golem on top. Is this card good? Man, that's hard to say. The interesting thing is you actually stop playing Wild Growth around turn 4 or 5. So Jade Blossom is one of those cards that you'd have to play on exactly like turn 3, 4, 5 to be good. I'm not certain whether or not Jade Blossom will give you an excess mana card when you cast it at 10 mana. Wild Growth does, and Astral Communion does, but those are the only 2 cards that do, which are specifically spells that don't do anything else when cast on 10 mana. Whether or not you get a mana crystal when you cast this on 10 mana is actually really important, because if you do, that means on 10 mana you draw a card, and that means it's like a good late game draw. You get a Jade Golem and you get a card. If you don't, you just get a Jade Golem for 3 mana. So here's the interesting thing as well. You need to analyze what the expected value of a Jade Golem is in your deck, and like you can't do that without seeing all the Jade Golem decks yet. Jade Golem cards. But I guess it would be fair to guess that a Jade Golem would have an expected value of like a 3/3. If we think 1 mana summon the Jade Golem is good, then Jade Blossom seems awfully good. Alright, for those who are looking for the cards that'll make Shaman great again, well, here's one. Transform all enemy minions into random ones that cost 1 less. Wow, that's a big board sweeper effect, and only 2 mana. This is a card that's gotten a lot of hype. People are already complaining about, oh man, you're gonna get devolved all the time. What a board clear. But how good is reducing enemy minions into random ones that cost 1 less? It's not even necessarily better than Mass Dispel, because Mass Dispel draws a card and you pay 2 more mana for it. It's like for most of these things, you would just kind of say, but you would hex them anyways. And is there going to be a time where you have to run both hex and devolve? And if you wanted to transform all enemy minions, you just kill them anyways with Lightning Storm. Something like that. So it's like, either you just hex them anyways, or you just Lightning Storm them anyways. And Devolve is like the middle child of those two, which is like questionable in terms of worth. So the big question is, does Shaman have the room to fit a utility card like this? It feels like it would fit into a Control Shaman. But if you were running a Control Shaman, why wouldn't you run Elemental Destruction instead? The reason why Devolve may not be as good as it looks is because Shamans already have a lot of these tools. They have Hex, they have Lightning Storm, and they have the mostly unrun Elemental Destruction. Will Devolve replace Elemental Destruction? Will it supplement Elemental Destruction? Stay tuned and see. And we've got Jade Lightning. So how valuable is dealing 4 damage? I think that maybe dealing 4 damage is like 2.3 mana. It's not even 2.5 mana. So you're using the other 1.7 mana to summon a Jade Golem. Is that good? Well, how much is a Jade Golem? Well, if a Jade Golem has expected value of like a 3/3, imagine this be a minion. It's a 4 mana 3/3, deal 4 damage. It turns out that that card is really good. So therefore, I think Jade Lightning is pretty good. Is that a fair assessment? Well, we'll have to see how viable these Jade Golem decks are. If you can consistently get your Jade Golems up to like roughly 5, and you have a Firelands Portal, which is a great card, which has gotten discounted by 3, which is why I kind of doubt this entire Jade Golem mechanic. Like, how good is a Jade Golem? It's really hard to evaluate these without knowing. Maybe Shamans are only getting like big mana cards, which summon Jade Golems, perhaps? Maybe. One thing that's for certain is that the Jade Golem mechanic is slow to start off of, but pays off large if he can make it to the end game. So these Jade Golem decks will probably be geared towards surviving until the late game. Got a rogue card. This one certainly looks very exciting. It's just like SI7 Agent. SI7 Agent is a 3/3 combo, deal 2 damage. This card's a 2 mana card, deal 2 damage, combo summon a Jade Golem, and I'm quite certain that you're going to want to summon a Jade Golem, so you'll almost never play this card without the combo effect. So again, we have to ask, how good is a Jade Golem? And how good is a Jade Golem is probably going to differ from Rogue, Druid, and Shaman. It seems like they balanced Jade Shuriken with the intention that your expected value of Jade Golem is going to be like less than a 3/3, because SI7 Agent is a great card. This is a starter-ish card, but since it has combo, it can be played late as well. It's not that fast. And remember, if a card has expected value Jade Golem of a 3/3, that means before you got to a Jade Golem of a 3/3 expected value, you had to summon the 1/1, you had to summon a 2/2, you had to summon a 3/3, a 4/4, and a 5/5. Perhaps Jade Golems are priced in such a way to encourage you to be able to survive past those first few cards that you play, which will obviously not be worth it, because a 1/1 that deals 2 damage on 2 mana, that wouldn't be that good a card. But a 2/2 already that deals 2 damage, that seems like a serious card. With a lot of these Jade Golem cards, I kind of can just wave my hands and be like, yeah, it'll see play in Jade Golem deck. Alright, Jade Swarmer. 2 mana 1/1, stealth, death rattle summon Jade Golem. Jade Summoner reminds me of Twilight Summoner, which is a 4 mana 1/1, which has death rattle summon a 5/5. Now, Jade Golem is probably not going to be expected to be good as a 5/5. That's why Jade Swarmer only costs 2 instead of 4. So the first Jade Golem you summon is a 1/1. So it's like a 1/1 which summons a 1/1 when it dies. That's not very good. The second one is a 2/2. A 1/1 that summons a 2/2 when it dies. And the Grandmother is a decent hunter card. It's a 2 mana 1/1, death rattle summon a 3/2. Those are beasts though and have some beast synergy. So based off of the balance of Kindly Grandmother, it would appear that the Jade Golem wants to be like expected value 3/3. Now, you're not going to get a 3/3 Jade Golem with this card usually in the early game. You're probably going to get the 1/1 off of this card. And then it'll ramp you into the more unfair cards later on. Turn 2 Jade Swarmer, turn 3 Unearthed Raptor to copy the Jade Swarmer. I mean, it's got stealth, so it's very likely to stay there. This might be the start of some kind of mid-range rogue deck. You run Undercity Huckster, you run Swashbuckler, you run like this Jade Swarmer card, you run Unearthed Raptor, you run a few Death Rattles, you run a few Jade Golems. Yeah, a lot of these Jade Golem cards, really tough to evaluate without seeing all the Jade Golem cards, but seems like a very promising mechanic, and I'm excited about it since it pushes control decks, and it doesn't just push control decks, it pushes like really specific decks that are certain to use this expansion. And there will be at least 3 flavors of Rogue, Shaman, and Druid. This expansion is looking like it's going to shape up at least 9 different decks.